Hey, folks, I just want to welcome you to episode 11 of You Own It with Jerry Thompson. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about something that I was reminded of early this week when I received a text from one of my local attorney friends that had cited an article about some data saying that the best time to sell your house is now. And it is a question that I get often when I'm talking to a home seller, which is, when is the best time to sell your house and why? And I want to start that conversation by telling you that at the end of the day, there are multiple factors that sometimes can change when the best time to sell a house is. Selling a house is about supply versus demand. It is a pure market. If there are no houses for sale, and there is high demand from buyers because of jobs, low interest rates, bank incentives, your values in your housing will have a tendency to go up. Not many houses for sale, a lot of buyers, higher demand, lower supply equals higher prices, economics 101, right? Or if housing supply is up, a factory closes in your area, or there are economic issues that affect the amount of people that need to sell, at the same time affect those people that want to buy, so that your supply of inventory of houses on the market goes up and your demand goes down, your housing values will go down to meet that market. One of the beautiful things about the real estate market is it is like any other economic market. It is impacted directly by what goes on around us every day. And you see strong real estate markets when you usually see strong economy, and you see a lot of people that want to buy, and you see limited people that want to sell. And you usually see a weaker market, usually when we see a weaker economy, and we see a lot of people in situations that are under distress where they need to sell their houses. And there are not many buyers jumping into that markets, which we experienced in 2008, end of 2008, early 2009, when everything, the world fundamentally crashed for real estate for a very short window until while the government helped kind of settle that issue. So it is a supply and demand issue, and it can be impacted by multiple things that surround us. So what I tell you today, I want you to be aware of, you should always, when you're saying what is the best time to sell, meet with an agent, have them come in and tell you, make some basic comparisons when you're thinking about if you're going to sell. What is the supply? What is the demand? And what am I looking at? Because I'm going to give you some direct data that tells you what the National Association of Realtors says. And then I'm going to tell you some anecdotal, my experience in different times that may not be based on long-term historic numbers, but I can tell you there are spikes and there are declines. There are different seasonal factors that can sometimes change your value. The second question is not only when the best time to sell, is what day is it best to go on the market? And I thought this would be an interesting topic to discuss, because oftentimes I get asked that question when people are thinking about asking a house. And usually I use my experience and I use my comparables and I use the data in the current market. But I've never really read the study until I got kind of this text from an attorney saying now is the best time to sell from a time of year perspective. And then I went and did a little research, and I looked at, in 2024, the National Association of Realtors came out with a study that started with a national perspective to say, when is the best week to sell a house based on historical data? And the conclusion is, it's my drum roll, terrible drum roll, right? April 14th to 20th. They literally, here, when's the best time? April 14th to 20th is the best time to put your house in the market, according to the 2024 National Association of Realtors data. Now, that is broken down based on markets. For example, I'm in the Buffalo market. And for years, when people have asked me when a good time to put their house in the market is, traditionally sellers will think, I should wait until spring. I should wait until May, because my house looks better with the flowers out and the plants out and everything else. And I've always told people, the people that my sense is were the winners in the market, the ones that would usually get a premium price, are those people that went on the market a little before everybody else. And I always had, I learned this years ago from a agent that has been at our company for about 40 something years ago, or for about 40 years, not 40 years ago. I'm really dating him, Mike Campanella, somebody that I learned a lot from in the business and has done this, I think, almost 50 years now. Well, Mike used to say to me, people hibernate, and then in Buffalo, they come out of hibernation the first spring thaw. And I learned that maybe 30 years ago from him. And then I've kind of every year encouraged my sellers to get on the market a little bit earlier than the end of April and May when things get completely green. And I think for the most part, they've ended up being winners when they've gone on the market a little bit early for the following reasons. In our region in Western New York, we're seasonally affected, meaning starting usually mid-December, we start to get consistent snow. We can get lake effect snow from December till often, mid-January before our lake freezes. And we can end up having cold, gray, dark days from December 16th or December 15th to about 3 or 4 weeks ago here in early March. And that has a tendency to keep people from going out to look at houses after 5 at night because it's dark, going out on weekends because you run into weather-related events. Oh, we're going to schedule showings on a Saturday, and you end up with a small blizzard coming through or a snow squall or things like that. And it has a tendency to disincentivize people from leaving their homes. This is kind of the hibernation theory. People go into their house, it's cold, and they spend their next 2 or 3 months not doing things that require them to go out, that they could just simply wait for the warmer weather. People will always go outside to enjoy, from skiing to ice skating to all the benefits we get in being in a weather community. But they don't, if I say, let's go out and look at houses, which you can do when it's warmer, only the most motivated have a tendency to attack the market and be out looking in the winter. So usually what happens is right around mid-March, which happened to us last week, Buffalo gets this burst of warm air where it goes 50, 60, 70 degrees. Last week we had 70-degree weather. The sun comes out and everybody gets outside because they want to be active again. They want to get out of their house and do things. And traditionally, there are no houses on the market because the sellers have waited. And the buyers that have been waiting since December to get out in the market all gravitate towards the 2 or 3 pieces of inventory there are. And those houses, if they're priced right, have a tendency to sell. That's my anecdotal evidence. That's my gut feeling. What I've always recommended to sellers is to try to get on the market early. Well, it turns out the best time to sell in Buffalo, New York, the best week, is March 31st. So I was pretty close. And that's based on the NAR data. The best week to go on the market is now. We have very low inventory. We have high demand. We have a good backed up supply of buyers, and we have very limited sellers. So if year after year after year, that theory that I learned, the hibernation theory, 30 years ago from a more experienced agent when I was first learning, where he said, hey, people hibernate, then they come out and they act because it's sunny and they're happy, proved to be true. And year after year after year, those sellers that hit the market a little bit before those sellers that hit the market in the summer, I think are rewarded for that in our market. And the data, so when you say, when's the best time to put a house in the market? Nationally, the average is April 14th to April 20th. The regional average in Buffalo is the week of March 31st to the first week in April, which is a little bit pre-spring. Golf courses aren't regularly open. We get a little bit of hit and miss weather, that sort of thing. Now, being a pure supply and demand market, there are things that cause that to go haywire year after year after year after year. So why it's important to talk to an agent about that. Does that mean it is a bad time to sell in the middle of winter? No, it's not sometimes. And that is because there's even lower supply in December than there is in March. Is it a great time to sell in the summer? Not always. Usually the inventory starts to pick up drastically in May, June, July, at the same time that things can change, lowering your demand. So let's say in June this year, interest rates rise a little because the stock market changes or something changes, or they don't go down like people expect them. And all these houses hit the market. Your demand does not increase. Your demand stays level. More houses hit the market. It impacts your value. So being a pure supply and demand market, you want to, if you're thinking about selling, you want to meet with an agent. You want to talk about how the supply of inventory looks on the market, what their sense is of the buyers looking. And then you want to pick a time that is good, well suited to you, to your timing. You want to pick a time that is well suited to the market that may get you the most money. And then there's always those circumstances where, you don't have a choice. You're getting relocated. You have to go on the market in November. You got to go on the market in December. I'm not saying it's a bad time to sell at that time of the year, because the differences in, what you may or may not get are not huge numbers. But on an average basis, the time to go on the market is March 31st here in Western New York, April 14th to April 20th on average nationwide. All of those then are impacted based on seasonal intricacies from the weather, as well as the other impacts. So let's talk about what those impacts are, what we're seeing, and then let's talk a little bit about maybe the best day of the week to hit the market. So when you're talking about supply and demand, the four factors that often impact us often in real estate is the economy and consumer confidence. How do people feel about their job security, their lifestyle, and what they're getting paid, and the ability of them to be able to perform when they buy that house? The stock market. Although it may not impact the first-time buyer as much as it impacts a retiree, I can tell you the turmoil in the market a couple weeks ago, where we saw a correction of close to 10% over a couple weeks, or it was getting close to correction territory, as they say it, certainly impacted people that were planning retirements, that have a lot of money saved in their 401k, and they're thinking, I'm going to move because I'm going to move to my patio home, or I'm going to move to Florida, I'm going to move to Texas, I'm going to move to South Carolina, move to California, and I'm going to cash in some of my retirement and buy. That impacts people when you see that retirement fund that they've saved their whole lives go from $622,000 to $572,000. That can be a year of their lives that they have to determine that, do we have to work that extra year from a financial plan perspective as to what they're going to do. So the economy, consumer confidence, the stock market, how that impacts it, jobs locally from a regional perspective, are there companies moving in, companies moving out, and then interest rates can impact supply, because they can impact a seller's willingness to move from one house to another. We're seeing a significant supply issue. When people ask me, why has there been a supply issue? Why has the housing market been so scarce since 2016? Well, everybody financed their houses at 2.675% between, 2016 and 2022. Interest rates were super low. And now they're a little higher. They're closer to 7%. It is really hard to get somebody to move up from an existing home when they're paying $1,400 a month with a 2.65% interest, and the next payment is going to be $4,000 a month at a 7% interest. So a lot of people have kind of decided to stay put. They have such great interest rates, they don't move sideways. They don't do what used to be our bread and butter in real estate, which is convenience moves. They don't say, I'm going to move from house A to house B because I've always loved that house. It's very similar to what I have, but I just want to change houses. People don't do that anymore. People usually are moving because of a specific need. House is way too small, and now I have 4 children. I need to get a bigger house. And it doesn't matter the economics. I got to figure it out. Either I got to add on to my house or I got to get a bigger house. And then they go price the additions and they realize they might be just better off moving from the existing to a bigger house. They don't do it on a whim anymore. It's a lot less emotional, what I call emotional sales, where people decide they've always loved the 1920s colonial and they want to move from their, similar priced 1980s, a little bit more standard house, just because they have lower interest rates if they financed in their house. And it's harder to convince people with the higher rate to make that move. So that has helped to keep inventory down. Lower inventory gives people less opportunity to move from point A to B. Again, it's like a vicious cycle of lower inventory. Low interest rates go to high interest rates. People don't move for convenience. Then those people that do want to move for whatever reason have less inventory, so it makes it harder to move. And if they have an existing house moving to another, it's very hard to buy something contingent that keeps those houses off the market. Your supply goes down and your demand stays high, and prices go up. And as prices go up, it makes it harder for people to achieve the purchase at that price. And we're in a situation now where there's low supply, and it's continued to be low supply since 2016. And I don't foresee supply catching up for a while. So it's still going to be hard to buy a house or find a house because of those circumstances. Now let's talk, that's supply. What impacts supply? Interest rates, economy, stock market, and consumer confidence. What impacts demand? Consumers' confidence, interest rates, stock market, economy, exactly the same thing. So when you have, this kind of strong feeling about the market from a seller's perspective, buyers feel the same way. You have low supply, high demand, prices go up. That's simple. Nothing for sale, good time to sell. Lot for sale, bad time to sell. Unless there's so many buyers, you're going crazy. It's supply and demand formula. So when I use this best time of the year to sell, March 31st in Buffalo, the week of, because low inventory, high demand, people coming out of hibernation, ready to act, ready to buy, nobody's on the market. Everybody's waiting too long. They want their grass to be perfectly green. And the buyers are out chomping at the bit now. They're ready to buy, but there's not enough inventory. So when you ask the question directly, depends on where you are in the country, when's the best time to sell the house, the generic answer is usually from a realtor, in the spring. Well, it's actually pre-spring, before spring, a little early, best time technically to sell the house. And then there are other factors. So you always need to sit down and talk to your agent, because there are things that drastically change that. And I'll tell you, a good example would have been post-COVID, when restrictions started to be lifted depending on where you were in the state. We went into COVID, people still needed to sell. And when COVID happened and we weren't able to go in houses, we weren't able to show them, all this stuff occurred, it would be like a river. There's a river of real estate transactions, and a dam stopped those transactions to the point where it slowed it down. The water backed up, meaning the demand for action, either sellers or buyers, backed up. There were still sales going on because the water would still be released to a lower level. But as soon as the governor said, you guys can act like normal again, you can leave your house, wear a mask, drive around, show houses, the dam broke. And at an odd time of the year, can't remember what it was, we were swamped. The amount of business we had was making good agents I was running from 8 a.m. till like 11 at night, because I had so much going on of people that were pent up and held up during that period of time. In Buffalo, we'll run into regional impacts that will change the markets a little bit. Like, for example, a few years ago, we had an October storm, which was like an ice storm that froze, damaged a whole bunch of trees. Power was out for a period of time. And traditionally in the late fall, we have a little bit of a surge where houses that have been on the market for a while will start to sell and get off the market. that end of October, the weather stopped business from happening. And then the dam hit, dammed it up. And then I'll never forget that November and that January were two of my best months ever. Now, it's contrary to this data from NAR, but because of the weather-related event that occurred, the backed up business needed to still act. There were still people that needed to sell. There were still people that needed to buy. After the storm cleared, the power got back on and things happened. Everybody that normally would have acted in that 2-week period kept working in November, took a little break during the holidays, popped back out in January. So the business was strong at a time of year that you wouldn't expect it to be strong. November storm we've had a series of events that usually in the Buffalo region, it's weather related. Other areas of the country, you may run into the same thing, but different pockets. So that's why it's very important when you're talking about the timing that you sit down and talk to an agent and then look at what the supply is, ask them what the demand they're seeing is, what's the average time in the market being very low will tend to show you, if average time in the market is 3 days, it traditionally means low supply, high demand. Now, the last question I wanted to touch on in this podcast without boring you too much with this ramble is what day of the week? And the NAR survey did the same thing. What's the best day of the week for people to put their house on the market? And I read this somewhere, maybe 10, 15 years ago, and the study confirmed it. Thursday. Well, why Thursday? You might say. Well, let me tell you what happens when you put your house in the market. When you put your house in the market, the best analogy I can use is you're entering is like waves coming into a beach. So when you hit the market, if you hit the market on a Monday, what happens is it's very quiet. Your house hits the market. And then all of a sudden, in over a 24-hour window, it hits 850 websites. That is when the buyers, who's the ocean in this circumstance, rise up and the activity comes crashing down upon the house. Meaning, if there's going to be activity, it happens in that 24 to 48-hour window directly after you hit somewhere around 800 sites if you have a good broker that's exposing the property well. Those are Zillow, Trulia, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if you hit the market now on a Monday and those website exposures meet their maximum, you're out everywhere within 24 hours. Your biggest surge of activity may be on a Wednesday as far as people viewing it, or a Tuesday, people viewing it. And traditionally, the busiest time for people to look at, buy houses, open houses, whatever they may be, are weekends. So if somebody sees your house on a Tuesday, they need to set up an appointment 4 days in advance to see it on a Saturday. Otherwise, they have to go in an evening, maybe, if they have a normal job. If they get out of work at 4, great, 4:30. If they get out of work at 5, they may not be able to see a house till 7 o'clock at night. And I can tell you, quarter of the year here, it's dark at 5 o'clock. So somebody may open their phone, hit the button, decide they're going to see it on Saturday, and a lot of stuff changes between a Tuesday and a Saturday. So anecdotally speaking, I've always said, the end of the week, put your house on the market, and the survey proved me right. The reason you hit on a Thursday, because it gives 24 hours for the house to get its activity, and the most peak buyer activity when a house hits the market is the day after on all the websites. It gives the websites time to catch up. Buyers click. They want an appointment. They're hitting their appointment on Friday for Saturday, and the surge happens on a weekend during the prime time, which in essence gets you the biggest wave of buyers, the highest price, the greatest demand. And to add to that comment, I often will have sellers say, when we hit the market on a Thursday at 2, and they get 12 showings on Saturday and Sunday and 4 offers, I'll often have sellers say, we've only been on the market 3 or 4 days. Well, those are your best buyers. For the most part, those are your best buyers. The buyers that saw it on Friday, hit the button, they're motivated, they're ready, they're taking action immediately, are usually the best people to buy the house. You normally do not see a house get that initial wave of activity, not sell in the first 5 days or 6 days, or get multiple offers in those first 4 or 5 days, and then hang around another 2 weeks and then sell at a premium price. Short burst, high energy, high demand gives you the highest opportunity or best opportunity to get the best price. Does that mean it always works that way? No. There's always an exception. You know, there's somebody out there in every meeting, every training, everything I've ever done that will tell me the exception to what I'm telling people. But I can tell you, if 88% of the time this works, that's what I'm going to recommend. If I ran around recommending the things that work in the smallest percentage of times, I wouldn't be giving you good advice. So, what's the conclusion of all this? If you're thinking about selling in 2025, don't wait till June, July, or August. Now. Take action now. Number 2, if you're thinking about selling in 2025, get a broker to meet with right away and ask, how's supply and demand look in your market? How do the comps look? Let's price it. How many days on the market should I expect? 3, try to have your house prepared till you hit the market towards the end of the week and try to have the house available to be shown that weekend. And you will see it. Look at the websites. You will see somebody on the market today and they're saying, we've hit the market, no showings until next Thursday. I'm telling you, a lot of those people that clicked it last week aren't waiting a week to come back to your house. They'll find a reason not to come to the house next week. Something will come up. Their schedule will change. Hit the market, be prepared, hit the market before a weekend, be ready to show it that entire weekend. I have had clients leave their house because of the activity. I had one house that had 42 showings. We hit the market on a Thursday. We had 42 showings, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They had to pack up the kids and the dogs and go to an Airbnb or a VRBO. It is the best way to get the maximum value. So the data backs up what I thought, and hit the market now and hit the market on a Thursday. And if there are things that bottleneck the market, stock market plunges, drastic changes in the Treasury, which is the interest rate, economic impacts, consumer confidence impacts, that bottleneck will break. So stay in touch with your agent, because one of these days, I've seen multiple of them in my career since 1991. I've seen multiple scenarios where things got really quiet. It was like the end of all housing. And people said, oh my gosh, we'll never be able to sell another house. My house will never sell at that value. And then, just like in nature, a river of demand, the dam will break and the market will get good again. So watch for those little fluctuations, which may not be completely seasonally dependent. But at the end of the day, just like when you invest, people that invest in this S&P 500 fund and they invest every week consistently will see on average a return over 20 or 30 years better than those people that try to hunt and pick their spots. Same thing with real estate. On average, if you want to pick the maximum time, on average over 30 or 40 years or however the study was, hit the market the week of March 31st in Buffalo, New York, April 14th to 20th somewhere else in the country, and you're all set. Thanks for watching or listening. I appreciate all of you, and we'll see you next month. Thank you so much for tuning in to You Own It. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any resources mentioned during the show. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow us on your favorite podcast apps, and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and greatest. All of our social channels are clickable in the show notes as well. I'd also like to remind you to check out our website, c21jerry.com. There you'll find more info on me as well as my latest listings for all of Western New York. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, through any big decision, you own it.